So for a while now, I've been covering conservative trans, political demagogues. That's right, conservative and transgender. It's real, it's true. Some of you who watch this video very well may be surprised, but the vast majority of you will not be. And for a very long time, I think the left, without much pushback really, has made the argument that the right broadly has no place and no acceptance at the heart of it for conservative trans people. People like Blair White, people like Caitlyn Jenner, people like Calvin Gara, these conservative trans true scum types that spend all of their time and basically devote the vast majority of their platform to shitting on other trans or LGBT people, almost to bolster themselves as one of the good ones, as they'll no doubt call themselves in private, I'm sure. For a long time, we've pointed out that these conservatives don't care for them. These conservatives aren't going to accept them if they win. Do you think if the right actually succeeds in passing if the right succeeds in passing the anti-trans bills that they are attempting to, do you really think they're going to discriminate based on which trans people supported them? Which trans people joined their cause against the groomers? Of course not. At the end of the day, these horrible fucking demons see all of them as the same, a target to destroy. And, I found a video that I think pretty much perfectly illustrates this point, put out by Ben Shapiro. It's called Two Dudes Pretending to Be Women Get in a Fight. I think you can imagine, based on the title of this video, what group of people that the title might be referring to in a derogatory manner. I think you might be able to tell what the titlers of this video might mean by that. So yeah, let's go ahead and check it out. Let's see what we see.
Okay, meanwhile, in the social politics sphere, a fight has now broken out.
Ooh.
I hesitate to characterize what kind of fight. It is between Dylan Mulvaney, who's a dude who believes he is a woman, and Caitlyn Jenner, who is a dude who believes he is a woman. And apparently, what led off this particular
I want to let you guys know, by the way, Caitlyn Jenner is a Republican, a pretty staunch Republican and a staunch conservative who has jumped on board with the other trans people have canceled me for speaking the truth against, I don't know who Dylan is, but by the sound of everybody in chat and by the fact that they debated Caitlyn Jenner, then yeah, sounds like they're based. I want to let you guys know, there is nothing that Caitlyn Jenner has done in the conservatives' eyes other than being trans that is bad. So I want to remind you here that Ben, one of the largest and arguably least radical conservative demagogues on YouTube, she's not even doing good enough of a job at being one of the good ones, quote unquote, to please Ben. I hope that puts into perspective how the right really feels about conservative trans people and their movement. They will use them, they will weaponize them, and they will utilize them as propaganda, as living propaganda machines. They will not respect them as people, and they will not respect their identities. And the saddest thing is seeing a conservative trans person have done to them exactly what you expect to have done to them, like this type of behavior, and for it to be I feel really bad about this, it's shit, but at the same time, if you pick up a venomous snake and it bites you and you start dying because it's now you have venom coursing through your veins, you kind of picked up a venomous snake by trying to become sort of like a pet for the right, a group that is unanimously right now trying to advocate for your essentially your death and destruction across America. So, yeah, I hope this puts things into perspective for at least somebody out there who maybe didn't have this revelation already.
Type of fight, and again, I will avoid characterizing the fight with any sort of noun attached to the fight, is that Caitlyn Jenner pointed out that Dylan Mulvaney had cut a video in which Dylan Mulvaney talks about how he is wearing short pleather shorts to the store, and his bulge is.
What are Dylan Mulvaney's pronouns? No one in chat has indicated to me. She. Is it really easier to say Dylan Mulvaney instead of she, because you're so afraid on one hand of like, because he alternates between misgendering and saying Dylan's name. So it's like, okay, on one hand it felt like before you were too scared to just outright misgender, but then the second time around you were like, you felt like you'd built up the courage to misgender her. Like, there's no reason. It's literally just faster to use she, her pronouns. You can't sit on the whole, oh, you're asking too much of us to change our language and compelled speech. It's too much to ask of us. You were literally saying like a 12-syllable name instead of a 1-syllable pronoun that you're too afraid to use. Like, what are you fighting for at this point, man?
Is visible to everyone. And he talks about not wanting to tuck, which is a painful and ridiculous procedure whereby men pretend to be women by apparently using some sort of adhesive to glue their genitals underneath them or something. And I don't blame Dylan Mulvaney.
Is that how it's done? I mean, listen, guys, I've popped a pretty bad boner before, like in public, and it's been like, whew, gotta hide this one. And the waistband method isn't going to work, because then there's just going to be the tip of my dick sticking out from my like, pants line, right? So you have no choice but to do the old tuck, right? You got to do the old tuck. And listen, guys, it hurts like fucking hell, all right? And it is not permanent. You have to do, like, the Stingray shuffle. You have to walk like C-3PO a little bit to keep it from, like, from going boom, just come boom, just popping back up. It's kind of like trying to keep like a balloon underwater. Have you guys ever tried to like a basketball or a soccer ball, trying to keep it underwater? It's a bit like that. Oh yeah, listen, everybody can benefit from this advice. All right, I learned this and it saved me from so many unwanted erections in high school. Okay. You get that really hard, like, you just clench all the muscles in your body, particularly your lower body muscles, like your butt, your thighs, your legs, your calves, everything. Try to push as much blood out from your lower body up into your upper body as possible. That usually helps. That was quite the stun lock, but hopefully it saves somebody. So yeah, basically just flex and unflex those muscles over and over again. It'll get the job done.
For not wanting to do that sounds wildly uncomfortable and terrible. But instead, he says, I want to normalize people seeing a person cosplaying as a woman with their dick bulge hanging out. And Caitlyn.
Okay, does Ben ever complain about cis dudes walking around in like tight shorts or tight pants showing off their bulge? It feels as though, like, under normal circumstances, if like Ben Shapiro saw some like cisgender guy walking down the street with like a dick bulge and a wife beater on, walking down the street of Florida. This is not an uncommon experience, by the way. I feel like he wouldn't see this as some demonstration of depravity or degeneracy, or as like a thing worth negative moral judgment. But now, all of a sudden, in his view, it's a man cosplaying as a woman, and so now it's bad. But then at the same time, I have no doubt that Ben Shapiro doesn't have a problem with men unironically cosplaying as women. Like, I bet if Ben went to like a Halloween party and like a guy friend of his went in some joke costume as like, I don't know, Nancy Pelosi or something, I don't think he'd see that as degeneracy. He doesn't have a problem with supposedly men trying to imitate women. These are all just red herring arguments. They're things that sound good. They're quippy little, they're pretending to be women. They're cosplayers, you know? Things you can say without any real argument to back any of it up. That's just meant to make trans people feel bad, but there's no actual substance there. Ben has admitted there is no substance to anything he has to say. He's done it numerous times when confronted. In fact, I believe there was a really good instance of it recently. Here it is. Look. Here's Ben responding to somebody some of you might know, asking him how he reconciles his positions with the overwhelming academic and scientific consensus that everything he stands for is wrong. Yes, it's synth. We played Rust together. We played Rust. It's pretty fun.
Why do you believe you're right about trans people given the American Psychological Association, American Medical Association, American Psychoanalytic Association? I can go on for about 5 more associations that are very prominent and govern the existing like health government or health industries within like the major Western countries. And all of these associations have multiple thousands of doctors, sociologists, psychologists, and with PhDs in their respective fields backing the idea that sex and gender are different, effectively gaining the medical consensus for sex and gender being 2 different concepts, yet you have a different opinion.
Okay, so sex and gender are 2 different concepts, but gender is tied to biology.
So he moves the goalposts first. So she's already said all of these institutions disagree with your position that sex and gender are different things, are the same thing, or that they are in some way so heavily related that one cannot truly be changed, or that either cannot truly be changed. He's trying to sort of like, so his first thing he tries to do is bend it to say, oh, actually, they do kind of agree with me, then wait and see what he does.
So one of the big problems that you see in sort of the argument in favor of trans rights is this notion that gender and sex are completely separable. They're not completely separable. If they are completely separable, then this means that identifying people by their subjective gender really has no relevance as to whether they are a male or a female. Male and female are biological terms. So
none of what he just said means anything. Like, none of that's even a response. He's rambling right now. So first he tries to say, actually, they do agree with me. Now he's rambling to try to make it sound like he knows what he's talking about and like what he's saying actually has any grounds. Wait till he realizes, wait, I can't take this position. They don't agree with me. She pins him down.
Using terminology like male and female to describe a self-perception of maleness or femaleness is sort of a bizarre way of arguing whether a thing is a man or a woman. So here's my question. It's an argument that my friend Matt Walsh likes to make. What is a woman? Define what a woman is without reference to the word woman, please.
So this is actually a logical fallacy called a red herring. You're asking me a question in order to actually challenge my question without actually
No, it isn't. I'm saying that
it
really is not. I'm saying that biology, I'm agreeing with you that the notion of gender, which is effeminateness or masculinity, can be different from biology in the sense that biology is just pure male or pure female. But to suggest that there is such a thing as an effeminate male is not to suggest that an effeminate male is now a woman. Transgenderism makes the argument that if you believe that you are a woman, you are therefore a woman. Or if you believe that you are a man, you are therefore a man. I disagree with this. There are objective measures as to whether you're a man or a woman. There are objective measures as to whether you're male or female. There's certainly a spectrum with regard to effeminateness versus masculinity. That's certainly true, but that does not change the underlying sexual dichotomy that is the basis for all human reproduction.
So all of that rambling is very nice, but not a response to why do all of the academic consensus, medical academic consensus and medical academic consensus, why does it all disagree with everything you have to say? you're just trying to worm around the question, Ben.
Yeah, you can answer.
Right. So this dichotomy is a false dichotomy that isn't supported by any of the medical associations that I just named
Then
off.
let me
None
explain.
of the medical associations that I just named off would actually support the idea that gender is biological. This is something that's completely untrue within every single medical consensus.
Well, then I will just say that anyone who suggests that gender has no reference whatsoever to biology, it's not connected in any way to biology, is just full of shit. Because if these
So, his response to the consensus, the academic consensus is, well, anybody who says that is just full of shit. And then look at how now you would think his audience is smart enough to realize, wait a second, our God King, our 5'2" God King up on the stage did not answer the question she just asked. What the fuck? Let's see how they respond. Let's see if they've got the IQ for it.
And the reason I and the reason that I say
So these people do not have enough brain cells to put 2 and 2 together, okay? If you're ever wondering why content like mine needs to exist, all right? You need to understand that the average Ben Shapiro fan out there, okay, I need to make something clear to you, okay? Ben Shapiro's fan base has been nonstop fed in its growth by the nonstop flow of teenagers getting onto the internet and getting into politics roughly 4 or 5 years before they develop empathy. All right? I really think it's about that simple. The average Ben Shapiro fan has not gotten old enough and has not reached the point in their mental development where they have developed empathy yet, which is where I think the left oftentimes falls short on its messaging towards these groups. Did you see the age of the average person in that auditorium? At oldest, they were college students. A lot of them were probably high schoolers or younger. The average Ben Shapiro fan online, certainly younger than even that auditorium. These are not people who have developed the mental ability to care about the pain of others yet. They will at some point in their life if they're good people, but at this point, the average conservative online, the flood of teenagers coming onto the internet and feeding the growth of online right-wing hegemony, these are people who just have not reached the age of reason yet. They don't even have they think if you ask most of these people, in a one-on-one combo, they think the concept of caring about the woes of other people is gay and cringe. All right? And I know it makes you want to doomer, but many of you were probably the same way. Maybe you weren't far right or whatever, but some of you probably had a really weird nihilistic phase where you thought subtly, you may not even be able to admit it to yourself, but sort of subtly, you thought you were invincible, you thought you were the center of the world, you didn't really have the ability to empathize with others, it didn't really hit you the same way it does now as an adult. And if you don't understand this, you probably haven't reached that stage yet where you're like, oh, fuck. It just kind of... You reach a certain age where the concept of doing harm to others doesn't sit with you well anymore in a way that it didn't when you were younger, right? And I think that's the vast majority of the audience that consumes this content. It doesn't matter how untrue the propaganda they're consuming is. They haven't even reached the age yet or the level of mental development yet where they care about truth. At this point, they're... political views are nothing but epic memes and edgy trolling, okay? So, that's not a defense, of course. It's just a sociological read that I've gotten.
Jenner was like, well, that's silly. And this, of course, meant that that Dylan Mulvaney was very, very horrified by all of this. Dylan Mulvaney was very mad about all of this because, when this is a real bleep fight between two dudes. Here we go.
Hi, Caitlin. I'm Dylan, and we are two of the most privileged trans women in America at the moment. And with that comes a lot of responsibility. And although we...
Man, YouTube really doesn't care, do they? Reminder, by the way, this is literally just TOS. What Ben's doing right now. Like, repeatedly, like, calling these trans women men, like, just over and over again. Like, it's completely against YouTube's TOS. I just want to remind you. As, like, we see non-stop left-wing figures getting, like, banned and false striked off of YouTube for criticizing conservatives breaking TOS, I just want to remind you all, this is one of the largest conservative figures on YouTube, just overtly and openly breaking the TOS. So I don't want to hear anything from conservatives anymore about, like, the anti-conservative bias, all right? Report him? You guys do it. I'm one person. I'm a YouTube. If I report him, then I look like a bitch. If you guys want YouTube to have any chance of taking action against the numerous TOS violations in these content creators' channels, go to their channel and hit the special comment button. You know? Don't you guys know about the special comment button? You go here, you click this, and you hit the special comment button. YouTube loves it when you leave them special comments.
We have very different views on most things. A few days ago, I probably would have still been willing to sit down with you and try to connect with you in some way, because I automatically have a lot of respect for you as a fellow trans woman. But then you decided to ridicule me very publicly. And honestly, this tweet didn't...
I want to remind you all, by the way, Ben Shapiro is like one of the top right-wing demagogues in the lineup. And this is the level of entertainment value he is offering with this content. Like, I'm not saying my content's a roller coaster ride or anything like that, but I feel like I offer a bit more excitement and energy to my presentation than this, like, dry, slow-talking, mumbling... Like, how many words has he spoken in the 2 minutes of this 7-minute video already? You know, like, we're only 2 minutes into Ben's video, and this recording's been going for 23 minutes. Which means I've talked for 21 minutes of this segment and allowed 2 minutes of the video to roll. That is the amount of commentary I've provided. I don't know. I feel like I'm just better at doing this than most conservative commentators. They're just really popular because they're peddling popular opinion.
Faze me all that much. But then this one made me go, not you calling me a he. That is just...
Okay, pause it there. So what Caitlyn Jenner tweeted out was that Dylan Mulvaney was talking about his penis.
By the way, I do want to say, calling, like, a trans woman he or a trans man her is about as creative of, like, a transphobic insult as calling a black person the N-word. There's no creativity there. It probably doesn't even have the impact that you think it has. Like, you're going onto the internet and you're just like, "Heh, you're a man, he." And it's like, oh, wow. I've heard that. So I've literally heard that 5 million times, and there's 5 people actively trying to find my address so they can kill me. But yeah, you really broke my resolve there. You really broke my resolve with that one, buddy.
And this apparently is very insulting. You must never notice that Dylan Mulvaney talking about his penis makes him a dude. Caitlyn Jenner's not allowed to notice that, and Dylan Mulvaney's very, very upset.
By the way, I want to remind you that Ben Shapiro in that last clip that I just showed argued that sex and gender aren't the same thing, sure, but they are interlinked, and that, being, like, your sex does not determine your gender because they are separated, so your gender can't determine your sex. So he made that argument, and now he's arguing that a trans woman talking about their penis makes them a man somehow. Does that not contradict his wormy little logic he tried to use to move the goalpost away from the question he got in that last clip I showed? It does. This guy just says stupid shit that sounds smart, and stupid people take it seriously and assume he knows what he's talking about. It really is that simple. I know it sounds like it must be more complicated than that, but it really is that simple and that easy to understand.
To Caitlyn Jenner about all of this. I mean, it is upsetting stuff.
But then you didn't stop there. You said there is a difference between acceptance and tolerance, and normalizing exposing your genitals in a public way and a public place. I do not support that at all, in the slightest. Dylan, ... Congrats, you're trans with a penis.
I do love that we're watching Caitlyn Jenner desperately try to put down other trans women that she perceives as being lesser, like, in their transition than her, believing that that will somehow garner her the respect of conservatives, who she seems to believe if she is just anti-trans activist enough and passes well enough and puts enough effort, quote unquote, into passing as a woman, then she'll be respected. But meanwhile, you've got one of the largest conservative demagogues in the world just flagrantly and openly misgendering her and using her as, like, the butt of his propaganda. It really must be a miserable existence. God.
Girl, you're making me sound like I'm some creepy flasher exposing myself.
Also, I do want to say, he's going to be like, oh, yeah. I do want to say, like, if you leave America and you go to, like, European beaches, for example, like, I'm not saying that, like, every beach in Europe or anything like that, like, women are running around with their titties and guys are walking around with their cocks everywhere, but, like, America is pretty uniquely, what's the word for it? Puritanical when it comes to nudity. Like, there are memes. It is literally a meme in Europe and other parts of the world that Americans will just, like, show their 12-year-old or 10-year-old child a movie with, like, blood and guts spraying everywhere and nonstop, like, swearing and foul language, but then cover their kids' eyes if, like, a boob pops out for half a second. In the last scene, a guy got gutted alive. Okay, and your kid was fine watching that? Like, okay, I mean, sure. I know that's, like, legitimately, like, a meme in a lot of places outside the U.S. Yeah, it's weird the U.S. does that. Yeah, I've met a lot of European people that just like to joke about how puritanical about nudity and the human body America is. It's actually pretty unique to the rest of the world. So let's not pretend like the point that Ben Shapiro is making here, the idea that, like, any any showing of, like, personal body parts or whatever, even if it's through clothing, like a bulge through clothing, is somehow, like, some degenerate, destructive behavior for society. It's not even, this isn't even a popular idea outside of America.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that is what he's making it sound like, because you are literally filming a video about your crotch bulge. So yeah, that would be.
Since when is it illegal to do a video about a crotch bulge? I'm sorry, don't we live in a free country? I'd get it if it was like, you know, just shoving your crotch bulge in kids' faces or some shit like that, but I have a feeling that's not what happened.
That would be the thing. I love that we're all supposed to pretend that we now live in a world of normalcy. This is all super normal, guys. Things are going amazing. Things are going just amazing in our culture. Oh, my goodness. This does raise a fairly significant topic, actually. The significant topic is David French, a person with whom I'm friendly. He tweeted out,
I like the subtle call to action to his audience there. We totally live in a completely normal society, guys. Hey, maybe you should do something about it. You know, maybe one of you watching this video ought to be one of them that goes out there and does something, huh? You know, maybe.
About a day ago, quote, "If you go back to the late 90s and early 2000s, religious liberty was far more tenuous than it is now. After more than a decade of religious liberty victories, securing key goals of the religious liberty movement, do Christians feel more secure? Why not?" I mean, the answer is pretty obvious. Okay, the legal victories in court are...
So, by the way, when they say religious freedom or religious liberty, what they mean is the dissolution of separation of church and state. Basically, conservatives in America have a dog whistle called religious liberty, and that is when Christians want it to be, like, mandatory to pray in classrooms, or, like, they want to make it so that you have... Basically, they're trying to get more Christianity in the government, in government sectors. Like, they view that as a good thing. They see the separation of church and state as a very, very bad thing. These people are not in favor of freedom of religion or, frankly, freedom of anything. They see the existence of trans people having the freedom to exist at all, as an impediment, on their freedom, on their religious freedom. These people's beliefs require LGBT people to be essentially crushed out of existence. They want you dead.
Are corrected to
A Christian America cannot be free and open for enemies of their religion to exist in. They've for a long time operated under this whole like, oh no, we have our beliefs and we just want to be able to like believe these things without the left canceling us. But something these people are going to have to start to contend with very soon is people have eyes. They're going to watch as more and more people lose their freedom, people they know and perhaps even care about lose their freedom. And as they realize, like, oh shit, caring about other people doesn't make you lame, they're going to start to realize they've been being peddled bullshit for all these years. And they're going to break out of it.
malaction in the public sphere. A legal victory in court happens after the government discriminates.
The right is at its most powerful socially when they are at their least powerful institutionally. When they're in little to no power institutionally, they're able to convince dumb and usually young people that things would be better if they were in charge. The instant they take charge, things get worse. They get worse for everybody, and it becomes evident. I mean, what was one of the first things Trump did when he got elected? That literally the entire internet unanimously agreed was bad. That started the sort of anti-Trump sentiment online being more broad. The whole fucking Ajit Pai, what was it? What was the name of that internet net neutrality? Him putting Ajit Pai, the guy that got rid of net neutrality, in power. That was something that literally everybody online hated. And that really started off what I think was the beginning of a lot of people's realization, Trump is a shitter. He is actually legitimately passing bills that are hurting me. Because that's what'll happen. If these people take power, they do things like that. They get rid of things like net neutrality so large corporations can monopolize the internet. That's what they want. That's the world they are trying to achieve. And as soon as they take power, they get to work getting there. And as soon as they take power, the effects become obvious. And people start to have their eyes open and they realize, like, oh fuck, these people don't give a fuck about freedom. It was all a dog whistle. It was all a lie.
Against you, then you have to go to court and you have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars elevating that to the Supreme Court to get people to leave you alone. Is that a victory for Christians? So for
I'm guessing he's talking about the wedding cake thing, but I'm pretty certain the only reason the wedding cake thing went to the Supreme Court was because it was a one-time thing based on, like, they had to essentially decide on how one of the amendments would be applied, right? Like the amendments to the Constitution, because the idea was that you can't discriminate, like things such as jobs, housing, etc. You can't discriminate based on, gender, sex, or race or whatever on those grounds. So they added gender identity, or wanted to add gender identity to that. Didn't they find that Baker was in the right though? Didn't the Supreme Court end up finding it that I can't remember how that ended. I think it was like a tie, basically, like a stalemate as far as court cases go, actually, if I remember correctly. It was so many years ago. What was the conclusion of that court case with the wedding cake? No, the baker lost. Based. I actually don't remember what happened. That was a long time ago.
For example, if you are the baker over in Colorado.
Well, there you go. I swear I don't pre-watch these videos. I can just run an emulation of these people's brains in my own brain.
And you're every week somebody comes in and says you're violating discrimination law by not baking a trans cake or baking a same-sex marriage cake or baking a Satanist cake. And you get sued like every 2 minutes by the discrimination committee in Colorado. And you have to take that to the Supreme Court every time. Do you feel freer? Do you feel like your religious liberty has been protected more than it was?
The reason why they don't want to provide that service is because they disagree with the freedoms of other people. So we have rules in this country designed to make it so that people cannot decide to essentially ostracize an entire group from society, right? Like, we have laws against businesses being able to put up signs that say whites only, right? Because if we didn't have laws against that, I can guarantee you there'd be quite a lot of places in the South where non-white people would be essentially incapable of getting, like, their necessities, right? And that would only get worse going back in history. These laws are in place for good reason. The reason conservatives disagree with them is because they want to have the right to be able to say, no black people allowed to, eat here or shop here or whatever. No Muslims allowed to go here or eat here or shop here. They want to be able to discriminate based on skin color, religion, gender identity, all those things. They want to be able to essentially use private businesses as a tool to excommunicate these groups from society while essentially keeping them as a perfect pocket of accessibility for the identities they agree with. So white people, men, cis people, straight people, etc.
20 years ago when none of this was a question?
Christians.
It turns out that there is no substitute for preservation of tradition at the local level. And when you shift the nature of the rules and then carve out exceptions, of course.
By the way, I want to mention, like, at the end of the day, Ben Shapiro is no different in this situation than Caitlyn Jenner. Anti-Semitism is on a rise right now. It's on a scary rise. And Ben Shapiro has been literally harassed in the street by Nazis on the far right because they don't like that he's such a massive conservative figure who's Jewish. Ben knows what the outcome is if his side wins. He doesn't actually want his side to win. He's willing to reap the money of peddling this propaganda, but he, I think, knows that if the ideology he fights for tooth and nail on his show every day actually succeeded, he would be killed.
Of course you don't feel secure. Do I feel more secure as an Orthodox Jew today in America than I did 15 years ago? I do not. I feel more secure in Florida than I did in California. But in California, I was deeply afraid that the state of California was going to remove tax-exempt status for my synagogue.
Yes, Ben, you are a multi-millionaire. Yes, the biggest fear you would have as a Jewish man in America, as a multi-millionaire, would be that your taxes would go up in California. Not that somebody would try to assault you, considering you can probably afford nonstop 24/7 security and, like, a goddamn bunker like Alex Jones or Tim Pool lives in.
Or for the school that I sent my kids to. They were going to use anti-discrimination law in order to cram down on educational institutions like the ones my kids went to.
I think what Ben might have meant by that is that school choice policy was causing there to be more non-white students at his kids' like preppy little. What is he arguing here? What? How would public schools are paid for with taxes? I imagine he'd probably send his kids to a private school. Wait, this wouldn't even have anything to do with school choice. Is he talking about private schools? What right does the government have to force kids into private schools? Is that a thing? I have a feeling he's making shit up here. He does that a lot.
LGBT policy. Why would I fear that? Because they're doing that in New York. They literally attacked Yeshiva University and sued them. They tried to fine them for not having an LGBTQ club at Yeshiva University, an Orthodox Jewish university. By the way, YU caved in dramatically horrifying fashion, sort of half caved. It was pathetic.
He's mad that LGBT students tried to make an LGBT club at their school. I'm pretty sure there are religious clubs in schools. At least there should certainly be allowed to be, right? Like, I think that there should be a club, like, at the school where, like, all the Christian kids can go into, like, a nice quiet room away from everyone else and go pray. And then there's, like, a room where, like, all the, I don't know, like, all the Muslim kids can go and pray or something. I don't know. And there's, like, a room where all the Jewish kids can go and pray. And then there's, like, I feel like that's there's nothing wrong with that, with having, like, a religious after-school club. And the same should be allowed to exist of, like, an LGBT, like, get-together type club after school. Like, Why? I don't see any issue with either of these things. If you have a problem with one or the other, then you might be a little bit hypocritical, Ben.
Why you ended up sort of with the worst of all available worlds. Why you said, well, you know what we'll do? We'll have an
Yeah, if there was a Satanist club alongside a Christian club, you better believe the right would lose their fucking mind and demand it be banned.
LGBTQ support club. And that support club, you know, we won't say that the activity is totally okay with Jewish law because it isn't okay with Jewish law, but we'll have a support club where we're sympathetic. And all that happened is the LGBTQ club that wanted to form on campus, like, oh, you're bigots. And everybody on the Orthodox Jewish side was like, what are you guys doing? It's one thing to say people are struggling with issues. It's another thing to glorify the identity as a separate identity, which runs directly counter to all religious thought.
Okay, so he's just mad that there are gay Jewish people that don't subscribe to the homophobic aspects of their religion. There are 6 recognized genders in the Talmud. Cool.
So shame on YU for doing that. But again, this goes back to the broader point. If you're wondering about discrimination against religion in American public life right now, we have 20 plus states in this country that say that if your child is gender confused and you bring them to a therapist and the therapist says, you might be a member.
By the way, he's not using real words. You know what's funny is that the right actually has a pretty good, like, gotcha on the left when it comes to gun rights in America. Democrats are really stupid when it comes to guns, and they oftentimes don't even know what they're talking about, to the point where, like, you can literally point to words they use that are just them making it's like not even a real word. Like, they love to use the word assault weapon. That's the one that always makes me cringe every time Biden says assault weapon. I recently saw, like, a gun YouTuber debunk him saying you can blow someone's lungs out of their body with 9mm. Just, like, every time Democrats, and especially Biden, talks about guns, it's like they lose -5 popularity points, you know? It's like, please, stop talking about this shit. It makes you look stupid. But then, on the other hand, you got the right, which will use the word gender confusion, which is literally no different. It's not like an actual thing, but there's no such thing as gender confusion. That is literally just it's no different than how back in the day when gay conversion camps were legal and they were doing electroshock torture on gay people, and, you know, you had conservative parents sending their gay kids off to be, like, sent to camps to be molested by, like, the pastor camp leaders while being told that being gay is evil and all that. Back when that was illegal and allowed, they called being gay or bi simply being confused. Confusion. You have confusion. You're confused. You have confusion. That's what they'd called it back then. That was their go-to thing. So now gender confusion is just their new thing. It's just the new thing. You can't really, like, the right does like to call gay people, like, groomers and pedos, but they have to be very selective because, like, society nowadays is, like, pretty damn averse to you saying gay people are bad, just generally. But trans people are, like, the new LGBT group that society is, like, 50-50 torn on at the moment. At least it feels like it's torn 50-50 on if you go on the internet. And so it's, like, broadly pretty socially acceptable to be transphobic. Pretty rarely do large public figures truly get canceled for being transphobic, in the same way that large public figures will be canceled for saying something like racist or sexist or homophobic, right? Society isn't as hostile to transphobia as it is of other bigotries yet, but it will be. We're getting there. It's been done once, it's been done a dozen times before, and it'll be done again. Enjoy it while it lasts, conservatives.
Member of the sex that you actually are a member of the sex of, and you might want to wait it out. That this could amount to some form of conversion therapy. And then you wonder why religious people feel abused, why their religious liberty protections aren't sufficient.
Imagine thinking that he means Christians and, like, Orthodox Jews, by the way, but mostly Christians. Of course Christians feel like they're oppressed. If they aren't taking rights away from literally every other group than them, that is them being oppressed. Part of their religion kind of requires them to push their beliefs and ideology on others and to negate the ability for people that don't agree with them to exist and have happy, fulfilling, free lives. It's like they have to please God. They have to instill their beliefs in others. Why do you think missionaries exist?
The answer is they aren't sufficient, because the status quo ante was there was an expectation that parents would be able to raise their kids in peace with traditional ideas like boys and girls exist. And now that has been...
they're so dishonest about the positions of the opposition as well. Like, I'm at least willing and capable of reiterating what Ben Shapiro believes, right? Ben Shapiro believes that sex and gender are inseparably entwined, and that regardless of how much work, effort, or belief you put into identifying as a gender different than the one you were assigned at birth, that will never change your sex, which is intrinsic to you, and thus is something that is objective and unchangeable, and anybody who believes otherwise is delusional. That is what Ben Shapiro believes, and if he heard me say those words, I don't think he could try to argue, and I don't think he would try to argue, I mischaracterized his beliefs. And yet he has time and time again proved incapable of even, in any good faith, saying what his opposition believes. Instead, it's like some shit like, they think men and women don't exist. Who the fuck is saying men and women don't exist? Are you fucking retarded? Who's saying this? I'm sorry to anyone in chat who's offended. Like, who is saying this? Nobody. There's nobody saying these gender identities aren't real. Giga Chad, I'm offended.
Exploded. And the substitute has been a society that suggests that boys and girls don't exist. And maybe if you're religious, we'll let you carve it out because you're kind of a bigot, but you are religious.
I get 1 per stream, okay? It's like an ultimate ability.
And you wonder why Christians feel bad. That's why Christians are not feeling safe these days. That would be the reason. Alrighty, guys, the rest of the show is continuing. Now you're not going to want...
Christians don't feel safe nowadays. What a bunch of little fucking pussies. Holy shit. Oh my god. These people have been subjugating, like, other groups from, like, for, like, 5,000 years to today, and they're still playing the victim. Like, honestly, Christians have to be the biggest cry bullies in human history. I don't think there's really any other group that stacks up to fucking Christians. What a bunch of pussies. Anyway, don't waste your ultimate ability. What if you're going to need it later and it's on cooldown? I understand that perspective, but sometimes I don't even use it. It's 2,000 years? Wait. How the fuck can Christians think that Christianity's only been around for like a fraction of the time the Earth has existed in their view? They think the Earth is 7,000 years old. Wouldn't Christianity have existed, like, since Adam and Eve were created? Weren't they Christian? No? Wow. Adam and Eve literally met God himself and they weren't Christian. That's pretty Giga Chad if you ask me. That's actually really Giga Chad. They also met the devil. They met literally the God and the devil and weren't Christians. Now that's pretty nutty. Actually, you know, believe it or not, a lot of characters in the Bible met literal Christian, like, mythological characters and weren't Christians anyway. That's actually a very consistent theme in the Bible, is for people to be like, I don't believe in God. And then they see, like, God happen and they're like, whoa. Well, all right, then. That's all you had to say. There is a story where that literally happens, where, like, 3 guys are like, nah, we believe in Jehovah. We're not going to worship your giant golden statue. And he's like, okay, I'm going to burn you alive inside of a giant oven. Get in there. And he puts the 3 guys in the oven. He burns them alive, or so he thinks. And then God just shows up and joins them in there. And this king, Nebuchadnezzar, I think his name was. Like, yeah, I think it was Nebuchadnezzar was the guy's name. He's like, there's a 4th guy in there. Get them out. There's a 4th dude in there. And it's like, that was your God? Like, your God actually, like, came down and saved you from, like, a 10,000 degree furnace. And we just saw him in there, physically. Yeah, we're in. Yeah, no, we're in. Yeah, tear down the statue. Tear down the statue. That's literally how the story goes. Christ didn't exist yet, so you couldn't be Christian? I'm sorry. There is a sea serpent in the Bible with like 100 horns, and each of those horns had like 5 crowns. Okay? That was a beast that occurred in the Bible, all right? You cannot tell me that it gives a shit about the realism of there being Christians before Christ was born, all right? I don't know. I'm fucking around. Anyway, if you enjoyed this segment, please consider leaving a like. It really helps my channel, my streams, and my videos out a lot more than you even realize. And of course, if you want to see more from me here on the internet, you can follow my social medias, all linked down below in the description, including my Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and my fan Discord. And of course, if you want to, go the extra mile and support me financially, you can always do so by donating, gifting a sub or subscribing for yourself on the website, xanderhal.com/live. I am, of course, trying to save money to move up to Seattle, so all donations are very appreciated and help and go a long way. And if you want to support me on other platforms, you can do so on YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, and even through Patreon. With all that said, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and have a good one.